detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors such as Virginia Roberts Ufree, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible? The 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorney's offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated the same materials in lifetime.
I named one. Today. Move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to a few meetings? Important mention of the district
was, so no.
Well, they were, and if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file, and I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI, the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Investigate.
An investigation against uncharged third parties with the insignia of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request. It's a article entitled DOJ Deletes Study Showing Domestic Terrorists Are Most Often Right-Wing. Thank you. Security.
I think that's largely their plan.
And it won't. They want to dominate you own stock.
I think that's, I'll have to get back to you. I think it's a law firm and it's a company out of Singapore.
Okay, well, no, the company out of Singapore, which is owned by Elite Depot.
Which I disclosed during my confirmation
You
process.
certainly did. And now, do you still hold that stock in that Chinese company?
Pursuant to the Department of Justice, who reviewed my material that was submitted during my confirmation process, I was able to hold certain stocks, and they made the
You
decision.
still hold the stocks that you have? You still hold on to these Chinese stocks, these stocks in this Chinese company?
I disagree that it's a Chinese company, but I was in the DOJ, when you're appointed, makes a call on what you can and can't possess.
Well, now, let me ask you this. Chinese companies steal trademarks, they produce counterfeit products and sell them over the internet on platforms such as Shein. They steal intellectual property. They steal data from American companies. And to me, it seems inconsistent with your role as FBI director that you would own stock in a company that is based in a country that is the nation's premier national security threat. It's like you are putting your own financial security over the security of the nation.
I disagree with that characterization.
Well, I think the American people look at it like it's a classic situation of the fox guarding the hen house. If the FBI is charged with investigating espionage, economic espionage by companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and you are the director of the FBI, you've got a conflict of interest.
Sir, I would just show if there's any intimation that I'm against.
Why are you holding on to this stock?
It wasn't a decision I made.
And it's valued at up to $5 million as of when you last reported, correct? $5 million in stock?
No, I don't follow it.
You don't follow it, but you're still making money off of it.
I don't have any money off of anything.
Well,
What I have done,
Trump's trade policies directly impact the value of that Chinese stock. Won't you agree with that?
which trade policy? I'm not a trade expert.
Okay, all right.
But I want to tell you
Play
this.
Crazy on me today. Let me ask you this question. Why are you hiding pedophiles? Why are you shielding?
Mr. Speaker, why didn't they ask for them in year 2? Or if that wasn't good enough, maybe in year 3, they had control. or not even in his final year of office. Other than a single letter the ranking member wrote in 2019, a single letter, not one Democrat on the committee spoke out about Epstein or his victims of this very terrible tragedy, other than to say that he didn't like the plea deal. Let me say this. When they stand here today insisting how badly they want these files released, why didn't they do it? Yet they stayed silent for year after year after year after year under Joe Biden. It's impossible. Mr. Speaker, it is impossible to see that as genuine. What I see is a group more focused on scoring political points and drama than on protecting abused children. The record is clear. Under Republicans, far more information has been released in the last 6 months than was done during all 4 years of the previous presidency under Joe Biden. We've actually been the party of transparency. We've released the information. We've told the truth. Unfortunately, and I'm sad to say it, they have been the party of hypocrisy. Mr. Chair, I reel back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
You know, I've never heard a more defensive presentation in my life than what we're hearing from over there. And a little less time pointing out hypocrisy and a little more time trying to ferret out cruelty, humiliation, and rape. And that's what we're working on. I yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Min.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
I want to remind you that we are all here voting on this bill because President Trump, who has the power to release the Epstein files at any time, has refused to do so, calling this a hoax. We're here because Speaker Mike Johnson and President Trump have gone to extraordinary lengths to try to kill and delay the discharge petition, including refusing to seat Adelita Grijalva for over 40 days and threatening House Republicans who signed on. Now, several of my Republican colleagues have accused those of us House Democrats who support justice here of having Trump derangement syndrome. You all suffer from something much worse, which is pedophile protection syndrome. Stop protecting pedophiles, release the Epstein files. The victims deserve justice. I yield back.
We reserve.
Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair. The gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
We reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from Maryland.
I'm yielding 30 seconds to my friend, Representative Walkinshaw from Virginia.
The gentleman is recognized.
For years, Mr. Speaker, we have watched dangerous conspiracies like Pizzagate and QAnon shape our political landscape. They help fuel the rise of President Trump and were built on baseless claims about secret pedophile rings, while the real documented case of child sex trafficking involving Jeffrey Epstein remains shrouded in secrecy because President Trump refuses to release the files. What is President Trump hiding? Why won't he release the files? The House finally has the opportunity to act, release the files, and let the American people see the truth. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
We reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
We reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Granting 30 seconds to the very distinguished gentlelady who is finally with us, Representative Adelita Grijalva from Arizona 7.
The gentlelady.
आपल्याकडे कोणती पॉलिसी आहे
25 किंवा 45 माझ्या लाईफ इन्शुरन्सचा कव्हर सेम आहे
पण वयानुसार गरज बदलते तर पॉलिसी का नाही म्हणूनच श्रीराम लाईफ फ्लेक्सी शील्ड ही तुमच्या गरजेनुसार बदलली जाऊ शकते म्हणजे तरुण वयात वेगळे संरक्षण आणि वाढत्या वयात वेगळे संरक्षण जशी गरज तशी पॉलिसी.
You are the reason why this vote is happening today. Protecting women and children from pedophiles should not be a Democratic issue, should not be a Republican issue. It should be a human rights issue and a matter of justice. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the Epstein Files Transparency Act. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, and we reserve.
The chair will remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is invited.
Is coming in, and it is that Democrats on the House Oversight Committee in the United States have done what they said they were going to do, which is to continue to release details from the Epstein files. A number of photographs have been released, a number of what appear to be copies of of passports, one passport from the Russian Federation, heavily redacted, visa details, pictures of Bill Gates, Steve Bannon in another photograph. And so it's all coming out right now. It is what they said they would do. And of course, they're trying to reach a point where Donald Trump agrees to release the entire files. And it was said that that could happen on Friday, tomorrow. We wait to see about that. Correspondent James Matthews joins me from Washington. And well, there's a lot to go through, James, but this is the Democrats doing what they said they were going to do.
That's right, Mark. Of course, we still await the full release of thousands of Epstein files. And as you say, the deadline for that is tomorrow. In the meantime, the Democrats have issued several dozen photographs, and we're looking at them there, which on first sight certainly don't indicate any criminality. I mean, in terms of the content, we've seen some pictures of some individuals that actually have appeared in previous releases. Bill Gates, we've seen Woody Allen, we've seen Steve Bannon sitting across a desk from Jeffrey Epstein. There are passports, as you say, with names redacted from a number of countries, Russia, Czechoslovakia, the passports of women. There is a passport of Jeffrey Epstein, and on one passport page, the words are stated, the bearer was convicted of a sex offense. There are writings, words written on what appear to be the body of at least one female, references to the book Lolita, which of course is about a man who had an infatuation with an underage girl. Quotes like, she was Dolly at school, she was Lola in slacks. We've seen pictures, we saw them there, Noam Chomsky, the academic, the essayist, on what appears to be a private jet sitting alongside Jeffrey Epstein. There is a picture of a packet of drugs used to treat a urinary infection. Jeffrey Epstein in the company of women. One photo shows him in the company of 3 young women. There is a map of Great St. James, Jeffrey Epstein's island. The question would be, of course, the central question in all of this for many is, what is in the remaining files that links Jeffrey Epstein to Donald Trump, the former friends? Is there anything that we have yet to learn about Donald Trump and his association with Epstein that we don't already know? I have to say, in the files that we're looking at now, actually, I haven't seen any Donald Trump content, so no indication about anything at all to do with the president. I suppose we have to wait for the full release to take a judgment on that. That full release has to take place in some shape or form by tomorrow. But what we're seeing today is Democrats on this House Oversight Committee. Remember, Republicans have the majority. They are in control. But the Democrats, who are frustrated at the lack of a full release, they are releasing what is in their possession and within their ability to put into the public domain. And that's what we're seeing now. Several dozen pictures and documents released while we wait the full publication.
And James, is Donald Trump still under pressure from people in the MAGA movement, for instance, who have long wanted all the files released?
He absolutely is, Mark. Remember, Donald Trump was a man who campaigned to get back into the White House largely on the basis of publication of the full Epstein files. That's a drum that he was beating for long enough. And now in office, he has been the individual standing for so long in the way of publication. He buckled under pressure, signed an order basically saying that they should be released in full. And that order dictates that that has to take place by tomorrow. I think it's midnight tomorrow, local time, Mark, but there is a degree of mystery. The Department of Justice is controlling this process, and they've given no indication when publication will take place, or indeed if we will see publication in full. Much speculation among Democrats, certainly, that there will be something of a fudge with redactions that essentially dilute the content, which, for the sake of the protection of guilty parties whose names and activities are included within them. So still a degree of mystery about what the contents will be. But of course, the central question is, as I say, what was the association between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein? What have we not heard? We know they were friends through the 80s, 90s. We know that they fell out because Jeffrey Epstein was luring female staff away from Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago to go and work for him. They also fell out over a property deal. So that kind of detail and that a degree of association is already in the public domain. Donald Trump emphatically denies any criminality and any knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal behavior. The question will be, do these Epstein files, when they are released in full, tell us any different? On first sight of today's release, there is nothing to point to any of that. So for now, we are still basically in a holding pattern when it comes to the Epstein files and Donald Trump's association with them.
I'm just looking through some of the pictures, and a lot of Epstein clearly. Bill Gates, Steve Bannon, no sign of Trump this time. A lot of pictures of his property and architects' plans relating to his properties. And as you were saying earlier, lots of heavily redacted passport details.
That's right, Mark. Yeah, bear in mind that many of these documents, many of them have come in the past from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. So there is much paperwork that doesn't necessarily allude to his criminal behavior, his criminal past. But I suppose what the Democrats are keen to emphasize at this stage is the extent of his criminal behavior. This man is a convicted pedophile, a convicted sex trafficker. So that's very much the mood music as we build up to tomorrow's publication. Democrats want to ensure that nobody loses sight of what a dangerous and despicable individual Jeffrey Epstein was. And they want to reinforce the questions faced by people who had an association with him. Donald Trump very much at the heart of that, of course. But, we're looking at pictures. There's Jeffrey Epstein on the private jet with a female, her identity redacted. We've seen pictures from today's release of, Woody Allen, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Noam Chomsky, the academic. I mean, no indication in these images of criminal behavior. And indeed, many people who had an association with Jeffrey Epstein in the past have been keen to issue statements of regret and a denial of criminal behavior. So the images and the people we're looking at, it's not necessarily wrapped up in Jeffrey Epstein's criminality. And that is the question, it's public knowledge that Jeffrey Epstein had his tentacles into high society, a friend, associate of the rich and famous. The question is, to what extent were they involved in the kind of activities that he was involved in? An island where he trafficked young girls, where he essentially kept them as sex slaves for his pleasure and the pleasure of visitors. There is much detail still to be learned about what went on in the company of Jeffrey Epstein, who, was visited on his island and in other places by people who had access to the girls that he had trafficked. Were they involved in criminal behavior? That's the question that remains to be answered, and one assumes will be answered in some shape or form by this full publication, as I say, of many thousands of documents. That has to happen according to the law, according to an order signed by President Donald Trump by close of play tomorrow. And as I say, there remains an uncertainty, a mystery about when they will be released and in what form. To what extent will there be redactions? To what extent, perhaps, will there be an effort to protect the identity and the activities of those involved?
Yeah, I'm just looking at another picture which has been released, which is effectively a sort of screen grab of what looks like some sort of WhatsApp conversation. I don't know, try to send someone else. I have a friend, a scout. She sent me some girls today, but she asks $1,000 per girl. I will send you girls now. Maybe someone will be good for Jay. And then a name of what appears to be a girl, redacted age, redacted details, redacted departure city, Russia. It just seems to be, there it is there on your screen now. It just seems to be that the Democrats are intent on releasing more. And it's interesting you say this has to be done tomorrow by law. Do we know how that's going to be done, James?
No is the answer to that question, Mark. And I can tell you, having walked the corridors of Capitol Hill, nobody appears to know. Nobody out with the Department of Justice, Donald Trump's Department of Justice. I mean, what the Democrats are clearly trying to do is just lay down the context. And it is a very lurid context. I mean, that text message exchange, that's pimp talk. This is the conversation of sex traffickers. And it doesn't say there, but it wouldn't surprise me if Ghislaine Maxwell was involved in that conversation. She will certainly have been involved in conversations of that nature. She was the associate of Jeffrey Epstein, used to procure girls for him. And that's why she's been sentenced to 20 years in jail, a sentence and a conviction that she continues to appeal against. And indeed, in the past 24 hours, she's made her latest attempt to have an appeal heard. Remember, of course, that she is enjoying the relative comfort of a prison which is not the prison she was sent to initially, very hard conditions, following an interview conducted by Donald Trump's former personal lawyer. She's since been shifted to more comfortable surroundings, to much controversy, of course, and much criticism by victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who make the point repeatedly that she is every inch as guilty as he was, very much part of the Epstein operation. But, what the Democrats are doing is essentially laying the ground prior to the release of these documents tomorrow. I've spoken to many Democrats, Republicans rather more reluctant to talk, but the Democrats actually are in the dark. They have their media arrangements and so on ready to go, ready to react to what we see tomorrow. I have to say they are suspicious about what they will see tomorrow, what they hope for, and many hope for, certainly victims of Jeffrey Epstein hope for, survivors. They want to see the whole thing, sure, with redactions to protect the identities of the innocent, but they want laid bare the full Jeffrey Epstein operation. What did he do? Where did it take place? Who did he associate with? And to what extent were they involved in his criminal behavior? Donald Trump, we know, has been mentioned and is mentioned in the Epstein files. We've already seen that. Susie Wells, his chief of staff, that interview she gave to Vanity Fair this week, she was quoted as saying he's in the Epstein files, but not in connection with any criminality. She described the relationship between Epstein and Trump in the old days as young single playboys, which raised some eyebrows. But yeah, Donald Trump in the files. The question is, to what extent will we read about him? What will we learn about him? What will we be told about his association with Epstein? And does that take him any closer to criminal behavior? Not seeing it today so far, Mark.
Okay, James, thank you very much indeed. Let's bring in now Joshua Schiffer, former defense lawyer for many of Epstein's accusers. Thank you very much for being with us. So what do you think the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are trying to achieve with this latest release of various pictures?
No, it's another kind of amuse-bouche in the giant meal that is the Epstein scandal. This is just a little bit of a taste of what we expect more of tomorrow. This is 68 or so additional photos out of the 95,000 that have been identified so far. And we've just been drip and dropped a little bit of information here and there talking about how explosive and how scandalous some of these photos are going to be. So far, we're definitely getting some good tastes. The Lolita prose written on a young woman's body, the pictures of many well-known and prominent individuals cavorting during the time in question with these young women. And we've got some really highfalutin, prominent members of society. You see a picture there of Bill Gates, one of the world's richest men, one of the world's most important philanthropists. He was well known to be associated with Mr. Epstein and has come out and talked about that relationship as well as the impact on his life. Of course, then having a rather prominent divorce and separation from his wife. Many other celebrities such as Noam Chomsky, the prominent intellectual. And that's just the ones that are easy to recognize. I believe a lot of interest is going to be in the other people, that second, third, fourth tier of prominent individuals, but not necessarily nationally or internationally famous. There will be a number of questions about, oh, I knew that you knew him or had met him. What are these pictures and why are the other people in these pictures a bunch of young international women? Big questions get asked. Why and how were they there if this is a business issue, if this is a mission trip? So we're going to get a number of additional questions as these reports are all released tomorrow, which is the due date according to the law signed by President Trump.
Yeah, and we see there just snatches of, I assume could be WhatsApp chats. There's also these pictures, as you say, of what appear to be young women with Lolita writing on them. One with a picture of a Lolita, the book next to them, and on it goes. And so tomorrow, how do you think that will be, how will it happen, do you think? Because presumably we're talking about thousands and thousands more files.
I think that's going to be an evolution of impact. Obviously, the knee-jerk reaction from multiple people, the first blush in trying to control the narrative, is going to be based on your perspective. People supporting President Trump are going to talk about how these are ancient history, how this is years in the past, and mere presence is not indicative of guilt or responsibility or even full knowledge of what was going on, because really and truly they are just pictures, and everybody knows that President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein had this relationship. It's the depth that people are going to be able to explore as they go through these documents. It's going to take some time outside of the 95,000 pictures. We've got however much written information is going to be released, and it's going to be substantial. So I expect an initial flash of pearl clutching and screaming and yelling that it's the end of the world or the greatest thing ever, followed by some more thorough analysis over the weekend as we get closer to the Christmas holidays. But certainly this is a top discussion issue for the entire world as we approach the end of 2025.
And just finally, Joshua, looking at the kind of stuff that's coming out, why do you think Trump was, when it came to it, so reluctant to do what is now happening?
Well, I think that's just basic human nature. We all have associations in our past that we may not be more or that we may be less proud of than at the time. And I think that's a reasonable tact. What I believe the American populace is really concerned with is the truth and betrayal. President Trump has flip-flopped over wanting to share this information or castigating it as being a hoax, one of his favorite words. And we'll have to see how that lands with the American populace. These are big issues that they care about. It is bipartisan. It's caused some serious fracturing within his MAGA base, where so many of his supporters just want to know what happened, want some transparency. Whether that ends up in President Trump's favor or harms his agenda, we'll have to see.
Okay, Joshua Schiffer, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much indeed.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Uber का year-end sale is officially live. Subscription plans are up to 80% off, starting at just $999. सिर्फ इस month के लिए. No more copyright strikes, no more muted videos, and no takedowns. Just clean, safe music for your reels, YouTube videos, vlogs, branded content, and सब कुछ. Offer खत्म होने से पहले subscribe to Uber.
This is India's only patented smart grid technology. It adapts and quietly readjusts to the shape of your body, providing softness to relax your pressure points and firmness to support your back. It has more than 2,500 plus air channels that keep you cool all night, so you can sleep peacefully. The Sleep Company. Visit our nearest store now.
A podcast saying, you know, we might have to do a deal like that. I mean, are you willing to do a deal with Reform?
Well, Reformers, they're not conservatives. What we're seeing is that they're increasingly at odds with those conservative values. They try and sell themselves as traditional conservatives, but they are supporting a massive increase in the welfare bill, which will come straight out the pockets of hardworking taxpayers. They do not back our national defense. They flirt far too much with Russia. They seem to be on the side with everyone that hates us and not on the side of any of our friends or allies. These are not conservative values, and I cannot see in any credible way how we could come together. I don't think it is anything that true conservatives would want to happen, because, as I say, Reform are a high-spending party that doesn't have the country's best interests at heart.
So Kevin Holloway saying that in the final scenario that could happen. I mean, you're suggesting he's not a true conservative? I'm sure that's not what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the Reform are not true conservatives.
No, but Kevin Hollenreich has suggested that if push came to shove, you might have to do that deal. Are you ruling the deal out?
Well, as I said, I can't see that there is common ground. And the point is, we go into elections fighting for our values, our principles. Reform is a one-man band. Reform is Nigel Farage and a bunch of people working for Nigel Farage. I had a brilliant quote from someone.
The minimum security facility, he was allowed to leave for 12 hours a day to work at a foundation he founded, and apparently continued doing exactly what he was doing before. And I don't want to be too graphic and lurid because there might be kids watching, but he was doing precisely the kinds of things that we're talking about in terms of the protection of children. He was violating children, violating young women, and then he would go and spend the night in jail. And in the meantime, he was able to bargain immunity for all of these other people who were working for him.
The gentleman yields.
Yes, by all means.
In other words, while he was doing all the sexual predation, the government was providing room and board and meals and making it cheaper for him to do so.
Well, that's not a bad way of looking at it, especially because apparently it was a very comfy jail cell they set up for him. Now, I'm sure he would have preferred to be back in one of his mansions, which were basically sexual dungeons for the young women and girls that got swept up in his sex conspiracy, which was something that the vast majority of Americans deplore and abhor and want to get to the bottom of and want to know the truth about. But anyway, he spent those nights, and then they wiped the slate clean for him to continue to go on and do it again and again and again. This is a guy who should have immediately been prosecuted and then convicted and sent to prison for the rest of his life for what he had done. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell was prosecuted and convicted as a felony sex offender and sentenced to 20 years in jail. She just got transferred out of her prison to a club fed in. Sex offenders are not normally allowed. Felony sex offenders are not normally allowed there. But after she spoke to the president's former criminal defense attorney, who's now working in the Department of Justice, and he liked what he heard, she was immediately transferred over to this very comfy arrangement in Texas. She skipped over months and months of the normal process where you have to prove there's some compelling reason to be transferred from one facility to another under the rules of the Bureau of Prisons. She bypassed all of that and she got sent over to this other prison because, well, Mr. Blanche liked what he heard when he went over to talk to her. Come on. We're the Congress of the United States. The framers of the Constitution thought that we would stand up for integrity and we would stand up for our interests and not be servile partisan sycophants to the President of the United States. So let us all show some backbone today. Let's say we don't move forward on this legislation until...
Save time creating content and generate a high-quality clone of your voice with 11 Labs. Change the way you record podcasts, voiceovers, and branded content with the #1 AI-powered voice generating technology. Stop searching for the perfect voice and stop wasting time re-recording take after take. Try 11 Labs for free and start elevating your content today.
Costa, he will be being deposed on the 19th of this month. So in 9 days, he'll set for a deposition where he will be under oath. Mr. Garcia, who has the job that Mr. Raskin used to have, can ask him all the questions and make all the points that the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee just raised.
But Mr. Chairman, you would agree that the questioning
from California is recognized.
Wouldn't the question be more meaningful if we actually had the file to look at?
Mr. Chairman, I insist on my point of order.
Gentleman insists on his point of order. Does the sponsor of the amendment? I'll recognize the gentleman.
Thank you. I'm reminded of Churchill's definition of a fanatic, a man who can't change his mind and won't change the subject. But the subject has nothing to do with immigration law, which is the subject of this bill, and therefore the gentleman's amendment would introduce material beyond the scope and purpose of the bill before us. It violates House Rule 16, Clause 7. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman from Maryland wish to respond?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I suppose I am a fanatic for child safety. I am a fanatic against child sex trafficking. Yes, I am. And I will be a fanatic to stand up for the public interest and the vast majority of Americans who want the truth to come out and don't want to sweep it under the rug.
Then the
Tuesday's
gentleman
my
will support
time.
this
It's my
bill.
time. I'm not yielding to you right now. I've heard enough from you. Now, Mr. Epstein's victims included aspiring models from abroad, including South America. He had a whole team working in France.
The gentleman,
used
the gentleman should focus on the point of order.
This is focusing on the point of order, Mr. Chairman, because
All
I'm
right,
talking about the international dimension.
Just reminding the gentleman who spoke more than anyone today here at this hearing and has said that he's not going to support the bill, as the gentleman from California just pointed out. So if you can stay focused
I
on
want
the order, that'll be good.
I would love to support the bill if you support the release of the Epstein file and the Costa file. I mean, let's.
We're forgetting all the information. We're forgetting all that information out, and that's why I've told you about.
Well, let's get it out today.
Costa's deposition and Mr.
We've heard a lot of promises about getting it out. We haven't seen much action. A lot of promises, but no action. Today, we could take some action. The gentleman suggests that my amendment is not in order because it's not germane to the question of international child trafficking and illegal immigration. Well, Mr. Epstein's victims, including aspiring models and girls being taken advantage of from South American countries and from Europe and France. He used a ring of associates to rotate the women and girls in and out of sexual servitude in different countries, in different places, using fraudulent modeling visas to transport them across state lines and across international borders. He tracked their availability and their proximity using this database. This is exactly what we're talking about. It's hard to see how it could be more material, more germane, and more relevant. It's also the case that air traffic controllers in the Virgin Islands observed Mr. Epstein leaving his private plane in 2018 with girls who testimony suggested were as young as 11 or 12 years old. In one undated incident detailed in a lawsuit, a 15-year-old girl attempted to escape and swim off of Mr. Epstein's island after she was forced to engage in sex acts with Mr. Epstein and some of his guests. The girl was found and held captive on the island after he confiscated her passport, the lawsuit said. So this goes on and on. I mean, you want to close your eyes to it and say it's not a big deal, but don't say it's not germane. You raised the question of the protection of children against international exploitation. This goes right to the heart of it. And I'm happy to yield to any of my colleagues who haven't had a chance to weigh in yet. The gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I, too, will support this amendment. I was appalled when I heard you say that they were preparing a 60 criminal count indictment against Alexandra Acosta. You said 60. That's even more than 37.
But not against Acosta, by Acosta against Epstein, and they suppressed it. Yes.
Well, I was thinking 60, and then I was thinking 37 with Trump, but 60 is a lot. And then I started thinking, you know, the underlying bill is actually, we would be debating institutionalized child trafficking and abuse if you actually look at the text of the underlying bill, which is why I support this amendment. We, the Republican, you all want us to stop talking about the Epstein files, but we would stop talking about them if you just released them and popped the balloon. And of course, everybody's going to show up and ask Kash Patel these questions. I'm trying to figure out why all the cover up. Because at the end of the day, we are talking about a man who orchestrated the sexual abuse, the sexual assault under the age of 18 in many instances. Everyone is all up and flustered when you're talking about folks being on a sex registry, about sex traffickers. But now all of a sudden with Jeffrey Epstein and all these people want the truth. That is why I support this amendment, because it also begs the question of who else is in the files. And I want to know.
Well, I thank the gentlelady. I'd like to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Raskin. Just as we're coming into this, it seems so clear, and it should be clear to anyone with a law degree who has ever participated in litigation, that you don't want to go into a deposition to question someone when you don't have all the facts that are available. So I wholeheartedly support the idea that we need to have all of the Epstein files released. Otherwise, the work that this committee is going to do is going to be hamstrung. It becomes another part of a cover-up. You know, why won't they allow these files to be released when it would do the most good for this committee and this Congress to do its work? I mean, what are they hiding? I support the amendment, and I yield back to my colleague.
I just would say finally, Mr. Chairman, this legislation is well-intended in different ways, and it's very flawed in other ways. One of the ways in which it's flawed is it says that kids can only be put with a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, but not other people who have lawful presence in the country who may be family members. Don't we want a situation where all kids are taken care of so they don't end up in a situation like this? They might be released to someone who's actually a child sex predator. This is completely germane and relevant, and I hope everybody supports the amendment. Thanks. Mr. Chairman, I suppose I am a fanatic for child safety. I am a fanatic against child sex trafficking. Yes, I am. And I will be a fanatic to stand up for the public interest and the vast majority of Americans who want the truth to come out and don't want to sweep it under the rug.
Then the
Tuesday's
gentleman
my
will support
time.
this
It's my
bill.
time. Mr. Epstein's victims included aspiring models from abroad, including South America. He had a whole team working in France.
The gentleman,
the
gentleman should focus on the point of order.
This is focusing on the point of order, Mr. Chairman, because
All
I'm
right,
talking about the international dimension.
Just reminding the gentleman who spoke more than anyone today here at this hearing and has said that he's not going to support the bill, as the gentleman from California just pointed out. So if you can say
I want to.
order, that'll be good.
I would love to support the bill if you support the release of the Epstein file and the Costa file. I mean, let's.
We're forgetting all the information. We're forgetting all that information out, and that's why I've told you about.
Well, let's get it out today. Mr.
Hang on a second.
Okay, yeah.
Clerk report, and then we'll go.
Amendment to the amendment and the
Without
nature.
objection, the amendment will be considered as read. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you kindly. My amendment's simple, Mr. Chairman. It would not let this bill take effect until all the Epstein files are released. My Republican colleagues have put forward multiple bills this markup that reflect